A big story actually came out last week, guys. I do apologize for being behind on this one, but still could be a big story going forward. If anything does come of it, a lot of speculation and a lot of lacking of knowing what teams actually could be at fault here. That being Rich, the founder of H2K, formerly of League of Legends, calling what he says is the League of Legends tax scandal of maybe LCS and mainly LEC teams, potentially organizations who could owe some large figures and back taxes back to the German government. If anything comes of this, we will see, because it's actually been rehashed years and years after the case itself. Now, beside all that, before we get into it, it actually comes down to and stemming of a template contract that Riot Games issued those organizations to sign their players with, and we have no idea what teams actually used that template contract. That contract supposedly would sign those players as independent contracted or contracted workers and not as employees, and that is where the issue derives from. To give you guys some relevance, outside of League of Legends, we've seen this time and time again. Many esports organizations will sign their players in a variety of ways, dependent upon a lot of factors out there. Age just being one of them, the hours they work being another, the content they create. We look towards Mouse Sports from the Rocket League scene. I believe at the time, Scrub Killer, the player they wanted, was 16 years old. He himself wanted to be signed as an independent contractor. Mouse Sports wanted him signed as an employee, both for their own variety of reasons. We look towards FaZe Clan, right? When they first signed a guy like High Sky, he was 11 years old. I highly doubt he was signed as an employee, and they've hinted at the fact he was actually signed possibly as an independent contractor or some other, however you want to classify that, because legally it would cause some huge issues if he's 11 years old at the time and you sign him as an employee. So there's many esports organizations out there who probably offer a variety of contractual agreements for a variety of players out there for all their own reasons. This one, though, it has potential to be big if things do come of it. So like I said before, it all stems from what Rich actually says was a template contract Riot Games to all of those esports orgs back in the day, and two teams who actually did not abide by these rules found out there was an issue was Rich's organization, H2K, alongside Unicorns of Love. Now with that, apparently it being the hours they were working inside Germany would classify a lot of these players, because they were working such strenuous schedules throughout the entire year, hours per day and days out of the year. A lot of these players would be classified as German employees, not as independent contracted workers, as that contract would have had those players signed by, which means they could potentially owe back taxes to the German government, of which those players were apparently employees in that said country.
Tournaments. Riot had decided, however, that their title had reached a point where to maximize the growth and interest in the game, they needed to move to a more in-house model where they could fully consolidate their resources and control under a singular roof. A seemingly smart decision with little downside to most onlookers. Teams participating in the league would in most cases be required to move to Cologne, Gambit being an obvious exception. I will explain why this is of particular significance later. Competing teams would take up residency in what would become some of the very first gaming houses, a place where your team would not only live but also practice. Decked out with gaming chairs, desks and computers, and with players now finally receiving salary in the form of payments from Riot, this was now very clearly a place of work. Why is that an important distinction, you may ask? Well, for you as a fan, it's likely of little relevance. Ultimately, what is the difference between players just a year prior, practicing in the comforts of their own homes and countries, versus being paid to do so in a parallel comfort of a company's rented home in Germany? Well, unfortunately for Riot, the teams, and yes, even the players themselves, there is a difference. A difference that may yet still manifest in the biggest shitstorm of all shitstorms to hit League of Legends. Allow me to lay this out in very basic terms. If you spend more than 183 days a year in a permanent establishment in Germany, working 30 hours or more, you are a full-time German employee. No ifs, no buts, no exceptions. It doesn't take a degree in advanced mathematics to work out where EU LCS players spending 10 hours a day practicing and a further 6 hours at the studio every week fit into this. Perhaps you're starting to see now how Gambit may have inadvertently circumvented this hurdle. Now, not only were no players in the LCS at this point being treated as full-time employees, but most of them weren't even being paid by their own teams. The teams that were paying often paid cash in hand.
The problem being, we have no idea what organizations and what teams sign their players using that template contract. Apparently, when Rich, along with H2K and UOL, brought this to Riot Games and the league and other teams' attention, nothing was done about it. They themselves resolved their own issues before it got out of hand and paid out whatever had to be paid out because of the issues with filing when it came time for an employee versus a contracted worker. And now we can only really speculate if other teams or organizations used that same template contract or are still using it or did for a fair share of time, they too might owe a lot of money when it comes to back taxes. Again, when it comes to legalities out there, I can't pretend to know how that German system or a lot of systems work out there. And yes, this being rehashed after years and years of nothing happening would lead a lot of people out there to think maybe nothing's going to happen at all, and that definitely could be the case. But if the German government steps back in and dives into these cases, a few of these organizations could possibly owe a fair share of money back to them. And I know a few people out there might think Rich brought this up years after the case out of spite because he himself is the founder of H2K and they are no longer a part of the tippity top of League of Legends, and of course did not get an LEC or a franchise spot as well. But guys, whether or not it's out of spite, he brings to light a great point. The fact that he himself, his organization, along with UOL, caught this issue and they had to pay out for this issue, and potentially other teams are getting away with it. You got to see it through those eyes and those shoes. Whether perfect or not, it does bring to light what could be a big issue, as organizations could owe millions, and Rich himself has talked long about these potential financial issues and potential debts that a lot of organizations run on. And so if this, comes back to bite a lot of organizations in the butt, and after years and years, it only compounds if it does get worse. If it does potentially get worse and they continue to owe more and more money once it all is unveiled, yes, it could cause some financial troubles for teams out there, and will definitely bring to light some more serious issues if that is the case. So we will see if anything comes of this, guys, the League of Legends tax scandal, which mainly means that a few teams out there could be owing a lot of money back to the German government. We will see what happens in the coming weeks, or if anything happens at all. Until next time, if you guys want to watch that full video, it will be linked down below. But until then, you know what to do. Drink your water, drink your coffee. I'll see you guys back here sometime soon.